As I mentioned previously, when a distribution doesn't follow that normal bell shape, it's useful to think about why not. There are several possible reasons why, but for our purposes now, I just want to focus on one. That's that our observations don't come from a single group, but rather come from multiple groups, each with its own different distribution. For example, in this case, there might be some reason to believe that there will be a difference between the number of birds seen by New Zealanders and by international visitors. We'll explore one possible reason for that later, but for now we can explore the idea by looking at the distribution of international visitors and comparing that to the distribution for New Zealanders. We do that by showing the New Zealanders here in black and the international visitors in green. When we do that, we can see that they do indeed look quite different. The two modes that we saw in the overall distribution are each associated with one of the groups. Only New Zealanders saw 6 birds, and only international visitors saw 12. And as you'll recall, in the previous overall distribution, there were two distinct modes, and they were 6 and 12. The distribution for international visitors has more of a bell-like shape, and it also has a much smaller standard deviation. So we can see here the standard deviation for the international visitors is 5, compared to 9 for the New Zealanders. That means that there was less variability in the number of birds that international visitors saw yesterday than there was in the number of birds that visitors from New Zealand saw. The distribution for New Zealanders doesn't look very bell-shaped at all. We can see it looks quite kind of flat with just odd spikes various places. So in that case, it's worth considering whether there might even be further subgroups among the New Zealand visitors. For example, maybe children versus adults or something like that. Beyond just exploring possible reasons why the overall distribution deviates from normal, this example illustrates something important about data in general, and that's that most things are more meaningful when compared to something else. For example, often we're comparing things over time, and we're looking at how things look this year compared to last year, or this quarter compared to last quarter. So sticking with the Kiwiland example, we might want to know whether the average number of birds that international visitors see this year is different from previous years or not. Perhaps that information would be important to the conservation groups that are trying to foster the bird populations on Kiwiland. We might also want to compare to some sort of a benchmark. So, for example, on average, do Kiwiland visitors see more birds or fewer birds than visitors to other offshore islands? That might be important to someone like the people who do the promotion for Kiwiland, because if visitors are going to see a lot more birds if they go somewhere else, then maybe seeing the number, featuring the number of birds that you see in Kiwiland isn't as strong of a selling point as something else that they might include in their promotional efforts. We might also want to compare to other groups, as we did here, comparing the New Zealanders to the international visitors. Other common examples of those looking for differences between groups are things like men versus women, or younger people versus older people, or things like that.